Chapter 22. Imagine you're someplace else. The darkness had teeth that snapped and clenched, and here was Virgil sitting at the bottom of its throat. He couldn't even see his hand in front of his face. There wasn't a sliver of light anywhere, not a single pinprick. "The bull wants to kill me," he said. He never would have believed it, not truly, but what other explanation could there be? His cries for help had traveled through the trees and landed on the bull's waxy ears, just like he'd predicted. Virgil had shielded Gulliver when the stones fell, then the light went away. The bull wanted to taunt them, then kill him. It was the only logical explanation. Who else would do such a thing? Now his heart beat quickly. Too quickly. Maybe I'm having a heart attack, he thought. Was this what that felt like? Could 11-year-olds have heart attacks? He couldn't breathe either. His lungs had been stolen by the darkness. He sputtered and clutched his backpack close to him, both arms wrapped around it like a life raft. Gulliver chirped, not knowing any better, or maybe he did, and he was saying goodbye. When Gulliver stopped chirping, a strange sound filled the well, a well mixed with a gasp and a hiccup. Virgil frantically searched the darkness before he realized the sound was coming from him. So maybe he wasn't going to die of a heart attack. It would be a breathing attack instead, or both. Virgil's breath caught in his throat. Now he was half gasping, half choking. Calm down, he said to himself. Only because of the gasping sound, it sounded more like calm down, but it worked, kind of. He stopped half choking anyway, but he didn't let go of the backpack. He told himself he was protecting Gulliver, but he knew it was the other way around. The bottom of a well is a quiet, quiet place. Virgil had never realized how noisy the world was until there was nothing to hear. No distant cars driving by, no humming of a nearby air conditioner, no birds chirping. He couldn't even hear the turning of a leaf. "This is the end," he said. He perched on the low ledge. "No one will know where I am. Generations of Salinuses will continue on forever, far into the future, and not one of them will ever know that I am here. People would say, 'We once had a boy called Virgilio in our family, but no one knows what became of him.' And they would make the sign of the cross. All the while his bones would lie at the bottom of the pit, with Gulliver's little bones next to him, so small that they'd look like thread." Virgil's throat was dry. His head suddenly felt very heavy, like someone had placed a brick on his forehead and asked him to balance it there. He opened his mouth to take a deep, deep breath, but he couldn't. His lungs felt full of air and empty at once. His body was a bundle of nerves, all being pulled up and snapped at the same time. And now it wasn't just the darkness or the silence, it was the smell too. Mildew and old, stale water. It reminded him of how the sink in the kitchen smelled when the drain clogged up. He closed his eyes. Imagine you are someplace else. That's what his mother used to tell him when he was very little and had bad dreams, before she called him Turtle, before they figured out that he wouldn't be perfect like his brothers. Imagine you are someplace else. He imagined his bedroom, with Gulliver rattling the water bottle. He imagined Kaori's house, with the circle rug and the incense that smelled like burned flowers. He imagined Lola at the table, reading her newspaper and shaking her head. All the imagining might have worked if Virgil's ears had been closed instead of his eyes, but because they were open and alert, they picked up a distant sound in the darkness. Ignore it, thought Virgil. Probably just Gulliver. Only he knew what Gulliver sounded like, and this wasn't it. Gulliver's noises were harmless and simple. Squeaks when he was hungry, chirps when he was happy. Guinea pigs didn't do much else. They certainly didn't ruffle anything. They didn't have anything to ruffle. And that's what this sound was. Imagine you are someplace else. Imagine you are someplace else. He went back to his bedroom, but it faded as soon as he thought of it. Kaori's circle rug vanished too. Even Lola and her table were swallowed up. The sound. What was it? Wings. That's what. Wings being opened. Wings being tucked. A colony of bats, maybe, ready to descend with their daggered mouths. Louder now. Virgil didn't dare open his eyes. His feet were blocks of cement, his legs were rubber bands, and his mouth was clenched so tightly that he was breathing only through his nose, but it wasn't breathing, really. More like hyperventilating. The sound of quick, useless breath spurting through his nostrils filled the space, but the rustling grew even louder, and he realized now that it couldn't be bats. This was something fuller. This had plumes, feathers, wings that could blanket an entire village. This was Paw.